Welcome, everyone. We have a good 18 odd people online. Hopefully, more will join. And thank you, everyone, who's come physically to CPR today. Post pandemic, we're always very iffy about whether people are going to register and then last minute decide to, attend talks from the comfort of their bedrooms, which is always yeah, exactly. So it's always nice to see people have made the effort to come, and there's some coffee and tea outside if you want to pick it up at any point of time in the session. Yeah. So that's some incentive. So it's my pleasure. My name is Mukta Naik. I'm a fellow here at the Center for Policy Research, and it's my pleasure today to welcome Aradhana Agarwal and Ankita Garg to present their work on the socioeconomic effects land industrialization. This work has been done in Sri City and work on land use changes in industrialized areas. This was, we know that this was a huge topic of interest a few decades ago, but of late, there's been a lot more study on urban and peri-urban areas rather than focusing on industrial spaces. So this is really exciting for us, Aradhana, to have you here. We had a small chat before starting, and clearly, we have someone who's spent many, many years thinking about special economic zones and policy around it, and consulted with various organizations, state governments, and national ministries, and is bringing all of that expertise to the table today. So we are very fortunate to have you here. Aradhana and Ankita will present their paper first, and we will have a Q&A. The format of the CPR CSH workshop is typically that we give the speaker free rein first, and then we draw ourselves into as long-winded a discussion as we have appetite for after the talk. So fasten your seatbelts and hang in there tight. Aradhana, I'm handing this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It could be. Not now. The
post presentation. So, well, thank you, Mukta, for inviting me. And I've been following the work of CPR for quite some time, CPR as well as CSH for quite some time. In fact, I remember having attended one workshop when there were a lot of protests going on around the country on SEZs. So I remember that CSH and CPR that time also organized one workshop, and I attended that, and it was really very, stormy kind of affair at that time. So, and after that, I have cited your work in many of my studies. I've been working on special economic zones for the past 20 years now, more than 20 years. So, and I have actually traveled to many SEZs across the world and worked on them actually. So this city work actually is very exciting, and it's very new to me because this is the first time that I looked at the impact of this project on the local communities and the people who lost their land. So from that perspective, I think this was something which was very new to me. And when I did this work, I just thought of CPR, CSH, because I thought that they were the people who were engaged in that, and the right platform is the CPR. So I wrote to Mukta and Partho actually, because he's known to me. And I'm really thankful that they invited me. Before starting this talk, I would also like to acknowledge the support that was given to me by a few people. And one of them is Mr. Srikant Badiga. Mr. Srikant Badiga is a developer, but very contrary to the journal perception, he is interested in evidence-based learnings and research. So he has been a great support for many years now. He was instrumental in initializing this when I presented this idea to him. And I would also like to thank CPCES, who provided me institutional support, because I was working with Copenhagen Business School. So for me, there was no institutional support in India. And EPCS at that moment came forward, and they actually organized this conversation with City MD, Mr. Sana Reddy. But most importantly, I am very grateful to Mr. Ravindra Sana Reddy. Actually, when we talk to him, he was so receptive of the idea, and he gave us free hand to come. There were no free ships given to us, no suggestions were given to us, and no advice was given to us. They simply said that you do the study the way you want. So that is where, we were really benefited by this, because there was some sort of apprehension that they might interfere, but there was nothing of that sort, not even the advice, not even the suggestions. So I must thank him for all that support that he had given to me, and his office people had given to me and to Ankita. Uh, so let me start this study. This study was actually, the survey was conducted in 2021, but due to various reasons, it got a little delayed. But I'm sure that City City is doing much better now than even that time. So let me just present the findings that we have got from this study. These were just blindfolded. Actually, when we got the survey, as I was a bit skeptical. I was very nervous whether we would get something out of it after spending so much money or not. So we took a time, to just to cool down, and then we started working on this. And I was so surprised to see the results. So I thought that we should write a paper. Initially, the idea was not to write a paper because I was not very sure what I would be getting out of it. So I thought it would be just noise. So that's what actually my fear was to begin with. So therefore, I just compiled these findings in the form of a paper, and it is published now. It is published in the International Journal already. Yesterday, I got the news. And this is online. Like, this is an open access journal. And this is it is businesses by MDPI. So they are things. So the MDPI journals are publishing a lot on these issues. So therefore, I preferred to send this article to them, and they readily accepted it without any charges. So that was also something which was very encouraging to me. So let me present the study. Next, please. Okay, sorry. So what is this study about? As Mukta also introduced, this study is about the assessment of the socio-economic effects of land relocation from agriculture to industrial uses. And this is a case study which is based on the City business city in Andhra Pradesh. This is, to me, this is the first study, to my understanding, this is the first study for India that has used the hard data and used counterfactual approach to measure the aggregate and distributional effects of land use conversion for industrial park. In fact, even internationally, most studies are using the secondary data of household surveys. So household surveys are being used, and then they try to see the areas where the SEZ is located, and then they try to measure. So there's lots of assumptions that are made when this kind of data is used. So, but this data actually is used through primary survey, and this hard data that we collected was then processed using counterfactual techniques which are available in the literature. Where did the motivation of this study come from? Well, actually, this study is motivated by the new structural economics. This actually is becoming very common now. This study is about the allocation of resources across sectors. Now, it says that relocation of resources from agriculture to non-agricultural uses, in particular in industry, has growth enhancing and poverty reducing effects. This is the kind of broad argument that this study carries on. The Sustainable Development Goal number 8 is based on this particular economics, and they are talking about structural transformation and decent employment, because when you shift from low productivity sectors to high productivity sectors, then you get higher earnings because it is related with the productivity. So Sustainable Development Goal number 8 explicitly talks about this structural transformation. But then all other SDGs are intricately related with structural transformation, because structural transformation affects everything, whether it is poverty or climate change or it is health, education. So this has become a sort of very important goal in most countries to drive industrialization. I have looked into the policies of many countries, and I find that there is a shift now from many other sectors to industrialization, and there is a strong industrialization drive that is happening across the world. And we know what is happening in India as well. So there has been a lot of focus on industrialization, but for this, a tool which has become very popular across the world is special economic zones or economic zones. So this has emerged as a very important tool on which policy makers now increasingly rely. But this requires large tracts of land. And where do these large tracts of land come from? They come from this conversion of land from agriculture to industry. So there is a sort of rush for land conversion from agriculture to industrial uses. Now, this raises two questions. One, what happens to those who depend directly on land for their livelihood? This is number one. Secondly, are the local communities positively affected by these projects? So these are the questions that experts are now uh, tackling with. And there are three answers, three broad frameworks in which these questions are answered. First is the neoclassical approach. The neoclassical approach says, because it is always concerned with sectoral allocation, it says that this kind of relocation of resource from low productivity to high productivity is growth and which is affecting everyone positively. But then there was a question of how about the people who lost land? So here their answer is that you have some good practices in land acquisition to care about these adverse effects. So that is what they talked about. Then we have Harvey's proposition, which is the highlight of this literature. Harvey's proposition is called accumulation by dispossession. So what he says is that any kind of relocation of land from farmers to capitalists is redistributive. It is not generative. They say that this serves only the class interests. It does not really, at the cost of farmers who are losing their livelihood means. So this is what he talks about. And most studies are framed in this kind of framework. And they really talk about how it is accumulation by capitalist, dispossession of farmers. So this is what this argument is, and it draws on the Marxist argument of primary accumulation. Then there is a third line of arguments, which I call heterogeneous approach. This approach actually talks about the project specific factors. So it says that the effect may vary from project to project depending upon the idiosyncrasies of the project itself. So the effects are quite heterogeneous. They are not really, we can't say that this is what happens if there is relocation. So we decided to frame our study within this last heterogeneous approach, and we argued, the entire study was based on the premises that much depends upon the project specific characteristics. That is the basic premise of this study. So, and we use quantitative methods to answer these two questions. Next, oh, sorry. No, it's okay. Now the question is that because we are assuming that the response could be heterogeneous, naturally it means that it has to be a case study. So we actually looked for the case study, and we were advised that why don't we go to City and do this, because this is one of the most successful industrial zone that has been set up under the SEZ Act 2005. So this under SEZ 2005, this City was set up by a private developer. It is located in Andhra Pradesh, one of the most backward areas of Andhra Pradesh, Chittoor, and it is spread across 7,500 acres of land. So what we did was we tried to look at the characteristics of this project to see what can we think about about the effects of this project. So we started with project idiosyncrasies, and we started with the regional kind of characteristics, that is where this project is located. So this project is located in a very backward area. This district that is called Chittoor has two mandals, which are Satyavedu and Vardaipalam. Vardaipalam and Satyavedu, they are predominantly based on subsistence farming of paddy. And this is a rain-fed area. This entire area is rain-fed area. People were dependent on agriculture with very poor rainfall record, and this data I have collected from the government records. Over 73% of the land holdings, according to the government data, were less than 1 acre. 3% of the holdings were above 4 acres, but 70%, 75% of the area under these big land holdings was barren. This was the situation in 2007 when this CZ came up. The developer we looked into, the developer is a first generation, highly educated young entrepreneur. He was running his IT business in the US, but he decided to come back because he has local roots. In fact, he is from the same area. So he wanted to come back and give it back to the people. The name is Ravindra Sana Reddy. He is Dr. Ravindra Sana Reddy. He has done PhD. In the literature, we find that there is evidence that entrepreneurs who have emotional connections with places, they have empathy for local population, and they have passion for hard work and success. And when I read about this, I felt that this is something which is very important in this particular case, because this is what I observed there. And it is reflected in the fact that he made it possible to acquire land within 1.5 years. And the project was actually started within 2 years. You know, one of the problems with SEZs in India was that the projects were not really started. The land was just idle for many years. So here we find that within 2 years of land acquisition, the process of land acquisition, the project actually started. And this was a time when there were protests going on across the country against SEZs. 2008, they started. August 2008, they started production. 2006, they started land acquisition. In fact, I'll come to this land acquisition because I got some information from the people about even the state involvement. Land acquisition actually was based on the consent, mostly on consent, and fair compensation was given in the sense, and this is quite verified by us through data and whatever was told to us. The compensation was given, which was 5 times more than the market price at that time. But it was not merely the compensation for land that was given. There was compensation for trees, tube wells, that is the infrastructure that was there in the area. Then there were people who were tilling the government land. Now, these people are not really, they don't have any kind of right on the land. And in case of any eviction, compensation is not expected to be given to them because they are tilling the government land. But in this particular case, the developer decided to give full compensation, equal compensation even to these people. But what is more important, I think, was the non-displacement of the locals from their habitat. Now, I think this was a single most important thing that really clicked. People were not really displaced from their habitat. There are still 14 villages within the city. And people are very much there and flourishing, in fact, because the land prices have gone up tremendously. Then there was job assurance to everyone in the family. At least one job was assured to every household. They started a skilling program. They started an academy, human resource academy, where they started giving courses on these semi-skilled kind of activities. That actually still exists, even though it is not sufficient now, and it is not really serving the purpose, that because it has become very big, the entire city has become very big at the moment. But at that time, it really was very helpful for the local people. Now, many people say that government should not engage in that. You know, there is a lot of controversy around eminent domain. people say that government has no right to acquire land on behalf of the developer. But in this particular case, we talked to people and we found that people said that they really felt that, I mean, there was a sort of trust that this state engagement or the state involvement would bring to them, because if it was only for the private developer, then there would be lack of trust. So we really understood from them that there is a problem of lack of trust when it is only acquired by the private sector. So this actually was a very helpful factor at that particular time. So this is what we were told from, when we were talking to those people. Land, as I just said, that land acquisition process completed within 1.5 years time, because of the kind of practices that were adopted and because of the kind of region that it was. So within that very poor region where people did not have many options in life and there was poverty all over, so they actually saw that there were some good prospects for their future lives. So, and then at the same time, they were given very good compensation along with many other assurances. So I think these are the two things that actually clicked, and the land acquisition process without any kind of uh, protest was completed. And I tried to see many newspaper clippings and I did not really find that, but there was point when there were some protests also, but that came when there was recession. So when there was recession and uh, the company was not getting a lot of investment, at that time people thought, they felt actually scared that they would not get any kind of employment. So at that time, some people were successful in managing those protests. But eventually, after 2014, nothing is reported in the newspapers because the Sri City started booming. And actually, at the moment, there is labor scarcity in that area. So that's the situation. So the project actually is a manufacturing oriented project, and it is focusing on light engineering and electronics industry. So like it has become a hub for AC industries in particular. Many big companies like Blue Star, Daikin, etc. are there making large scale production. So this is offering opportunities of job creation for a wide spectrum of workers. So these are skilled, unskilled, and very skilled. Every kind of worker is required in those projects. Land availability is easy because there is land available in the SEZ. Then infrastructure is very high class infrastructure. I haven't written much because I thought that I would be getting just 20 to 30 minutes. But the fact of the matter is that this entire infrastructure is attuned to the environment. So they make sure that there is rain harvesting. They make sure that there is the use of solar power, use of solar power. I mean, all those street lights actually are powered by solar light. This is the situation there in that zone. And solid waste management is very good there. They have quite a few options that are provided within the zone for solid waste. So it's a very clean place. And I spent 5 weeks there, and I found that the infrastructure was really very high class. Unrestricted supply of labor, of what power and water. And then it is very close to ports, airport, highways. So it is very well connected with this external infrastructure. Uh, then we had a lot of unskilled cheap labor at that time in the proximity. But then there was another point that was very important, that it was very much close to Chennai. And from Chennai, the companies could draw skilled labor and technical manpower. So many technically or professionally qualified people come from Chennai for this project. And then there is established ecosystem in Chennai from which the SEZ can draw on. So this is the kind of, these are the kinds of conditions surrounding the project, which are very important for the success of the project. As a result of that, what we find that today it is one of the most successful special economic zones. It is not, I won't say this as a special economic zone, frankly speaking, because this is not. It is a hybrid zone. Only one small part is a special economic zone. It is set up under Special Economic Zone Act. So that's it. And actually, this is very good because there are a lot of import substitution is happening in that place. Not only AC industries are coming, but these metro parts are being manufactured on a large scale in this zone. So that is what the situation is here. There are 210 companies, to my knowledge, and from various countries. And it is not only about the project, companies in the project. There are other companies now that have started coming. So we have this huge hero plant that has come up next to this city. And then there are other companies, automobile companies, which are coming, and telecommunication companies, which are coming in the vicinity. And as a result, there are lots of options for the workers to go from. If they are not happy with city, they can go to Hero. They are not happy, they can come to city. So there are quite a few options to them at the moment, because earlier, there was nothing. This was a very poor area. Labor turnover is very high. We spoke with the companies, and everyone was actually complaining that initially there was a lot of abundant labor and it was very difficult to really recruit them because there were so many, and now we don't get anyone. And again, there is a problem of labor recruitment. So this is the kind of situation at this moment. So it is one of the most successful zone. And so based on these observations, these are our observations, and which we have categorized under project characteristics. And we feel that because of these, the project, we formulated a hypothesis which says that the project has socioeconomic well-being enhancing effects on those directly farming and the land, as well as the local community. So this is how we started with to formulate that, and then we tested it. And when we tested it, we tested both aggregate and distributional effect. Aggregate effects are intertemporal changes, that is pre and post kind of changes. And then distributional effects are those who were directly affected versus who were not. So this is how we actually estimated the counterfactual effects. But then what are the social economic effects? It's a quantitative study. So we had to have some indicators of socioeconomic effects. So where do they come from? This entire concept of socioeconomic sustainability is a multidimensional concept. There are so many things that you can cover under socioeconomic effects. So what we did was that we actually looked at the sustainable development goals and tried to draw on them for the measures. So we actually looked at the no poverty. So here we classified all these indicators into 4 groups: material well-being, which are directly related with SDG 1, then quality of life, SDG 1, and 6, which is also water and sanitation, because we covered some indicators for that as well. Then sources of income, which one of the direct one that I just talked about was the SDG number 8. Then access to education, SDG 4, health and mental well-being, SDG number 3. And we also looked at whether there is equality enhancing effects, which is SDG number 10. So this is how we try to gather or compile a set of socioeconomic effects for our quantitative analysis. Now, the data, actually for the data, we depended on a primary survey that was conducted between September 19 and June 17. 2021. It was the time when there was this was a short period of time when the lockdown was relaxed by the government. So we tried to make use of that short. The information was gathered from 33 villages. In fact, we identified 42 villages which were within the radius of 25 kilometers from city, but we could actually, and we planned 42, but for certain reasons, we could only cover 33 of these villages. But in addition to that, we also covered the town of Sulurpeta. Sulurpeta is not a rural area. This is a town, and this is within 23 kilometers of Siri city. So we also try to see how the rural areas were affected vis-a-vis these Sulurpeta. The questionnaire covered wide ranging of questions, and they captured household characteristics, migratory status of households. I don't have any kind of analysis of migration into this particular study, but it's very interesting to see how the locals are coming back to their own roots. So this was something that we found through interviews, and also in the questionnaire. But the only thing is that data was not sufficient to really process that. So, but there was a very big evidence that people who had gone out, they now see opportunity in their state, and they are coming, I mean their area, so they are coming back. Income, sources of income, occupational status, savings and borrowings, education and health status. So these are the things that we try to cover through this. Now the thing is that we needed both baseline and current period information. Now, where do we get the baseline information? That was a big problem for that area. So what we did was actually, we actually asked the households to recall. So this baseline information is based on recall by households. So the questions were formulated in such a way that we really gathered this information on what they were and what they are now. So, and I was very surprised to see that people were more than willing to talk about what they were and what they are now. Whether they were positive or negative, that's a different thing. So, but they were very, very open about, and they were very open about giving their details of income as well. You know, in cities, if you ask people, what is your income, then it's very difficult to gather that information. But in those areas, they were just giving us the whole calculation of what they were earning. So this is something which really was very amazing for us. We also had discussions with officials there who are managing City City, and also the companies who are operating in the special economic zones to gather the idea of regional dynamics. Before the questionnaire was formulated, it was a structured questionnaire. We actually had an informal talk with people around us. Those who were working in City, they were living there. So they actually are, so because we did not know how to formulate the questionnaire. We did not know the issues. We did not know the dynamics. So this entire questionnaire was based upon our informal talks, conversations with the people. And after that only we went ahead with this survey. Methodology, actually, we had quantitative techniques. So for aggregate effects, we had some very basic t-test, pre and post analysis. So what was happening in general on an average in the base year, and what is happening now, and how much is the difference, and whether this difference is significant or not. So this is called t-statistics test. So there were simple t-tests there. But when we come to distributional effect, then we adopted the quasi-experimental designs. And here actually, the entire idea was that we have to analyze the changes in the well-being of those who were directly affected by the project in comparison with those who were not. Now, how to define the people who were directly affected by the project? So these are called treated groups. And we identified 3 groups. This was our conceptualization based on the literature. So we actually took the land lost farmers, which obviously are directly affected by the project. We also took the second group, treated group, which is households living within 5 kilometers of radius of the project, and the households within 10 kilometers of radius of the project. So these were the 3 treated groups, and corresponding to these 3 treated groups, we identified 3 comparison groups. Now, this is how the quasi-experimental designs are conducted. So we identified 3 groups of comparison groups. But how do we identify these comparison groups? Comparison groups are identified by matching methods. There are several matching methods in the literature, in quantitative literature. So what we adopted was the nearest neighbor matching method based on Mahalanobis distance model. So this is according to some evidence that this is the method which minimizes the bias between a treated group and the comparison group. So we actually identified a number of covariates, that is the household characteristics, and then we use this technique to match the treated group with the rest to identify the comparison group. So this is how it happened. And then the next step was that we compared the outcomes between baseline and current period for the treated group. Then we compared outcomes between the baseline and current period for the comparison groups. Okay. And then we took the difference between the two to see how the situation changed for comparison groups and treated groups over a period of time. So this is called difference in difference. So this is how we estimated these distributional effects of. These are the description of the variable. There were three treatment variables, three treatment groups, which I just talked about. People who lost land, people who were living within 5 kilometers of Surrey city, and people living within 10 kilometers of Surrey city. And then there were covariates, which we used to match the two groups, that is the treated groups and the comparison group. So we actually looked at the caste factor. We looked at the household, the number of household, head's age, head is male or female, then head's education years, maximum education of the family, average household age, the share of working age, people, members in each household, whether they are working in Surrey city or not, if they are beneficiary of a welfare scheme or not, and if they are currently owning land or not. So all these parameters were used in matching the two groups of households. And then we identified a number of outcome variables, because that is what is important for us. Once we match the households, we have to see how they performed. So for that, as I just said, that we had 4 sets of variables: material well-being, financial well-being, then quality of life, sources of income, and access to education and health and mental well-being. I'll explain these variables when I explain my results. So these are the results. So we start with the aggregate results. Now, this was very surprising for us that all these variables. So if you look at these, the first column is about the variables and how we measured that. So we had this household income annual, and we had household income per capita. They are in constant prices. Then for source of education, source for income, we had agriculture as a source of income equal to 1, 0 otherwise. That is the probability of agriculture being one of the sources. And then we had this jobs, the probability of being involved in job, probability of being involved in business. But we did not stop there. We also took the share of agriculture in their total income, share of jobs in their income, share of self-employment in their total income. Then we try to see the quality of life through various variables, which are very common in the literature. And these are, for instance, if they owned a house, if they were living in huts, the type of rooms in the house, the number of types of rooms in the house, access to water and electricity, number of vehicles, access to various electronic gadgets. Then we went over to financial well-being, where we had this number of bank accounts, savings, borrowings. Then we looked at the satisfaction levels and whether income is sufficient for their children's education or not, because we did not have any data on children's expenditure on children's education. We actually asked for the sufficiency of income for the education of children directly. So all these variables were tested for pre and post period. There was no control that was involved in that. It's a simple average and the difference in the average. And we find that all of them turn out to be significant in the right direction. So people who were, the probability of being in agriculture declined, probability of being in job or self-employment increased. And then we find the share of income, share of agriculture also changed. It declined in their incomes, and the share of jobs and businesses in their incomes increased. Quality of life, we found that all of these variables turn out to be significant. And look at this living in huts. It turns out to be negatively significant at 1%. So it means that overall the probability of living in huts, that also declined, because earlier we were told that they were living in huts, and during rainy season their houses were dismantled because of the rain. So this was the situation that was actually described to us. And but now we find that it is turning out to be a sort of town where most of these houses are of concrete. And yes, and we find that the assets have increased, and But here what you find, borrowings have increased over the past. Now, this is something which was very interesting to us, and we wanted to explore that further. So the savings have increased overall, but at the same time, borrowings have also increased in this. So we actually, with this kind of scenario, we say that overall we find that there is a sort of positive effect of this relocation of land. But then
satisfying the income, I think it's at one.
it is very, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is very small, and I will show you that this turns negative. So this is something very interesting, and this is what actually we explained later on. But and in this particular test, it turns out to be at least significant at 10%, which is hardly significant. But then it changes the sign when we do this control thing and experiment. So distributional effects are in fact based on these quasi experiment. And here what we actually calculated was average treatment effect on treated, which is based on, as I just said, nearest neighbor matching method. And then these are the results here. These are the results for income. And we find that there are 2-3 things that we find here. First is that incomes have improved in general. This is the strongest effect of sericity, as we will see as I progress. So, but the effect is but the effect dissipates with increase in distance. So at 5, this household income for people living within 5 kilometers of distance, that effect is more as compared with those who are living within 10 kilometers of distance. Okay. And in fact, you look at this household income, 10 kilometers, this turns out to be insignificant. Okay. Now, when you look at this per capita income, here you find that the effects are stronger. Per capita income effects are stronger now as compared with the annual income. This is something, and this is significant for all of them, even though they become smaller as the distance increases. Now, why this is so? Now, this we explain by the fact that household size declined after sericity came into being. Most of the people, they were living in joint families. And after this sericity came, many of these people got money, and they had this joint families actually broke up, and they started going for their own ways. And actually, we interpreted this in a very positive way. I don't know how Partha will take it. So what we explained is that now that people had more choices in life, earlier they had no choice. So they had to live together and they had to share whatever they were earning. But now, because they had more choices, they actually broke away and they started, they carved out their own destiny. So it could be that there's a huge difference in the member size, household members size, between the baseline estimates and the current estimate, 9 versus 5. So I think this is what is reflected in this, that even though household income, annual income hasn't increased for those who are living within 10 kilometers of distance, per capita income has gone up. Now come to the probability of employment. This is another very important element of socioeconomic sustainability. And here actually the results are even stronger than the incomes. So we find that for all these groups, the probability of being in agriculture declined. This is the one where I'm just showing the probability. Okay, so in this slide, I'm showing the probability, and we say that in agriculture, the probability of being in agriculture declined for all these groups. And then probability of being in job increased for all of them. Now, these are two, but obviously look at the size of the effect. The size of the effect is coming down. The probability actually is 39. If you look at the last column, 39%. Now it has come for the people who are living in within the distance of 5 kilometers, it is 22%. But for the people who are living within 10 kilometers, it is 16%. So this is the change. The change is becoming smaller, but it is still positive, and it is still significant at 1%. So that is something which is very interesting here. Now, so far as self-employment is concerned, there we don't have very definitive results. Here we have very vague results. And according to the literature, self-employment is not a high quality employment. This is something that we have to keep in mind. Then the sectoral shares in incomes. Now, sectoral shares in income are reflecting the earlier results. That is the probability of sectoral shares, sectoral employment. So here again, we find that there is a significant decline in the share of agriculture in total income. The share of job income has increased significantly. And of course, you will see that the effects are becoming smaller as we move down. Again, we find that the share of self-employment in total income, it is not very definitive. I mean, this result is quite ambiguous. But in this particular case, we find that for the land-lost farmers, it has increased, but for others, it is negative but insignificant. So which means that according to this, if you look at this SDG 8, then this is a sort of move from low productivity to high productivity employment, that is decent employment we are moving towards. Now, quality of life. Now, quality of life, actually, these results are the strongest for the land lost farmers. You know, so what?
In the CCP complex, or whether it was, did the survey capture the job in CCP or whether there was a job, any job? Is there data in the survey?
Yeah, any job. Any job.
Not
serious. Not seriously. Any job.
But close enough. Close enough to speak.
Yes. It is around the seriously only. Quality of life has improved. If you look at the signs are in right direction, but they are significant only for land lost farmers. But overall, we can say that the inequality has declined because there is because the effects are in right direction, even though they don't turn out to be significant. Next. Oh, thank you. Yeah, 5 minutes I will bind up. My last slides are there now. Education, we did not have any direct measure per se, but we did have one question, that was if income was sufficient for the education of their children. And this probability turns out to be, again, you see that for people within 5 and 10 kilometers of distance, the sign is negative, even though it is not significant. But for land lost farmers, it is positive, even though it is not significant. So people don't feel that income is sufficient in general, but there is some positive improvement in the case of land lost farmers. We also did this pair t-test because we did not have any direct measure. What we did was we divided the population, the households, into two groups, two age groups. These are 14 to 28 and then above 28 years. So 14 to 28, we say, is within that era of sericity, and above 28 are people from before the sericity era. And we find here that these educational attainments are much better, not for the land lost farmers in the first case, that is the high school pass, but for the people living in within the distance of 5 and 10 kilometers. It turns out. Now, if you look at this degree holders, there we find that the distance, the kind of results are very, very significant. So here we find that there is a sort of, maybe it is due to the increasing returns on education that people are now getting more and more education. And this was very clear when we talked to people. Most people were willing to send their children to private schools, which are very expensive. So, but they are still willing to send them to, and many people were really going out for education. Next, please. Health, actually. health was again could not be captured the way we captured many other variables, but we did ask a question whether you have chronic disease in the household, and we find that now this is very interesting to see that land lost farmers actually were found to be having higher probability of being chronically ill. So this is something which was very intriguing for us, and we did not know why it is, because, and look at the satisfaction level. Satisfaction level, if you look at for land loss farmers, it turns out to be it turns out to be positive but insignificant, but negative for, this is what I was talking about, negative for the people who are living. So people are, maybe because the material aspirations have gone up now, and this is why people are not really finding satisfaction out of this. And this could be one reason why chronic diseases have been there. The incidence of this is high, but all this needs to be explored. Next, please. Financially, again, because of this quality of life, because of these aspirational things, education and health, uh, we find that savings haven't increased, but borrowings have increased in distributional effects. So all of them actually find that for even for land loss farmers, the effect is positive. And if you look at this middle column, it is significant. So they are significantly more high borrowing than the others. So there is a significant increase in the incidence of borrowing, you see. So this is something which is very interesting to see, that how people are borrowing. We also looked into the reasons for borrowing, and now we found that education, health, and social occasions, these were the three major factors. They did not say that, they simply said health, education. I mean, of course they said it, but the most important prominent factors were education, health, and social ceremonies.
They mostly built their houses from the money they got.
They got from the survey. Yeah, that's what
So
they said.
at that time they did that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Next. So now I am coming to the end of this. So I'm sure that I'm not maybe. So what we find is that there is significant transformation in the area. There is no doubt about it. If you look at the aggregate effects. However, when you look at this, distributional effects, we find that there are some results which are ambiguous, and there is improvement in the lives and livelihoods of the people living in that area. But the most beneficiaries were the land loss farmers. Their lives actually have changed in a very big way after the City came into existence. The benefits are smaller as the distance grows, which is something which is a very standard finding in the literature. It's not something very new about us, but I'm very happy to see that this is happening. This was happening in our survey. So this is the thing that's why I'm highlighting this so much. So now, despite improvement in life and all, we find that satisfaction have not significantly improved. It means how we look at it as is that happiness is not really there. Yeah. So these are the kinds of negative outcomes of development, maybe. So this is what is happening, and this could be reflected also in their borrowings, in their illness, health-related issues. So this is what actually how we interpret this. But then finally, we say that all these results are good, but we can't journalize these results. This is because these results are based upon the characteristics or idiosyncrasies of this particular project. However, it shows that if you have certain good practices in land acquisition, if you have certain good practices in planning of the project, planning of the project is very important, where to set up, and then the implementation of the project. So if you have good implementation, good planning, if you have right policies for land acquisition and sustainable practices adopted in there, then these industrial projects through land conversion can have positive effects on the lives of the people and can transform the regions where they are. Just one point I would like to make, if you allow me. There is a study which is very, if you look at, if those who are familiar with the literature, they must be familiar with this Levian study. I don't know how many of you have read his lots of articles he has written. And his analysis is based on Rajpura IT, SEZ in Rajasthan. Now that is an IT SEZ. So what we do not really challenge his conclusions. This is not a kind of quantitative analysis. This is a very qualitative analysis which he has done through interviews, and he has actually spent a lot of time there in Rajpura, and he made his own conclusions and observations. We do not refute, but we say that probably it is that manufacturing projects have greater effects on the equality and on the well-being of the people as compared with the service-based. So this could be the reason for that. But overall, we say that these projects can have positive effect if you adopt inclusive and sustainable practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aradhana. Ankita, do you want to add a few things? Yeah.
So I want to reiterate some of the results which Radhana ma'am discussed in terms of, not in terms of probability, but in terms of absolute numbers. So households in agriculture have reduced from 125 to 68 from 2007 to 2021, which is that people are moving away from agriculture. Similarly, out of 250 households, 50 households had two income sources in before Sri City, which increased to 105 households having two income sources in 2021. After Sri City, 28 households have three income sources. So this shows income sources diversification. After Sri City, 191 household jobs as income sources as compared to 67 households which were engaged in jobs before Sri City. Households with no business have reduced from 198 to 160 out of 250 after Sri City. Also in 2007, 181 households did not borrow at all, while in 2021, 83 households did not borrow at all. Only 5 households had hut ownership in 2021 as compared to 104 households which stay in huts in 2007. And also I wanted to discuss some of the facilities at Sri City we actually observed there during that time in 2021. So there were accommodation facilities for workers and employees, and there were banking facilities, SBI, Canara Bank, and ICICI. Then there were some training institutes as well, which we visited there in 2021. Sri City Siemens Technical Training Institute, it is called as. And then there are education institutions and health institutions as well. There are 2 schools in Sri City, Chinmay Vidyalaya and Accord School, which are both English medium schools. In terms of health, there is one general service providing a health infrastructure hospital and one eye care center as well. In terms of roads, there are well-laid roads, and in terms of power, there is 450 megawatt power, which is allotted by government of Andhra Pradesh to Sri City. And in terms of water, there is 81 billion liters per day of water, which is allocated by government of Andhra Pradesh to Sri City. Yeah. And also there are logistic and warehousing companies as well in Sri City. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
This comes from this
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
But they have a lot
Ankita.
of rain harvesting. So that is something which is very important.
Yeah.
And there is a sort of, this entire, this ETP plant, this waste treatment plant. So through that they are, through ETP plant, actually they are using that rain harvesting water.
Thank you. There are already a couple of questions in the chat box, but let's open it to the floor first. If there are something from the floor, we can start here. And both Mohit, Kanchan, and the person who's anonymous, I'm coming to you next, so just hang on.
Just a minute, just get the microphone to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, ma'am, I think very comprehensive study. And the impression we get is it's a successful project, successful SEZ, right? Now, how does this compare with other SEZs in India? And especially because all the SEZs got promoted in India because of the experience of SEZs elsewhere in the world, China and Korea, and so on. So compared to other SEZs in India, as well as the yardstick of SEZs elsewhere in the world, which were the original motivation in China, Korea. And so that's what I would like to know.
No, we'll collect a couple of questions, so maybe 3 from the room and then we'll resume.
As rightly said, it's a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you. And I think you called land lost farmers. They're the guys who sold the land.
Yes.
How do you say that they're lost the land?
Anybody else in the room? Philosophical questions. Okay, so
Sometimes it can haunt you, I'm so land, ancestral land. So
We appreciate this.
Yes, land
it can be a sense of loss.
no, actually land tied them down. Small pieces of land, they can't go anywhere. Nobody was buying it. It's a rocky area also.
So, but because it was a larger.
is there anyone else in the room or we can answer these and then move on? Okay, go ahead.
Now, how does it compare with other SEZ? In fact, not many SEZs are successful, not only in India, but even abroad. There are very few SEZs which are successful in the world.
Gift City in Gujarat.
Gift City in Gujarat, actually, yeah. So that is also not a SEZ like as City City. City City is not an SEZ. So it is a hybrid zone. It's so we call it hybrid zone. Had it been as SEZ, it might not be that successful. And the reason is that in India is not seen as an export hub. I have that kind of experience because I've been talking to many people, this Japanese and all that. They simply say that India is not seen as an export hub by them. They always see this Southeast Asia as the export hub. And China, of course, is the export hub. Nobody doubts that. So, in India has this advantage of large markets. So I think this policy of restricting SEZs to exports only by law is something that is killing these SEZs. So this hybrid zone, it is really successful outside that SEZ, which is a parcel there, a land parcel there within that zone. So this is something that we need to really keep in mind. And this actually became very successful because of those reasons. There was a sort of passion to make it a successful zone. And then there were all sorts of conditions which were very favorable for the success of this zone. Okay, so I think this is the reason why this zone is successful. But if you look at SEZs per se, then they are not very successful. Not even SEZs in City City is successful. Okay. This is what I wanted to say. So yeah. So even if you go to Southeast Asia, you don't find many zones very successful. If you look at only SEZ, you don't find that they are very successful. Many of them are really not working up to that. So I'm recently working on Cambodia and Thailand. This is my ongoing project. And I find that I visited them and I find that very few companies there, Vietnam is the most successful case, but even in Vietnam, quite a few zones are not really working. Most of this activity is coming from selected zones only. For instance, let me tell you, one zone is Samsung zone in Vietnam. And also, let me just tell you that Vietnam doesn't have SEZs. Not a single SEZ they have. They have only industrial zones. That is something which needs to be understood by outside world, because everything that is industrial zone, we call it special economic zone.
Because you give them special benefits and so on.
Some benefits, yes, special benefits, but they are not giving them any kind of regulatory benefits as such. Okay, so they are mainly getting these financial incentives. So that is what they are getting. So Vietnam is very successful because of the kind of policies that they have formulated, because of kind of openness that they have, free trade agreements they have, they have very conducive policies and then the entire workforce is very docile there, and it's very unlike, the kind of,
Unlike Rajpura, I'm sure. They wouldn't be as docile.
And then we have, so, okay, I see. So land loss farmers, now this is a very interesting question, which I was not expecting at all. In fact, in the literature, if you sell land, they are called, what do you call them? People who have lost their land. So this is how we actually, I mean, this is how in the literature they call it. So I just use that terminology.
Compensated.
You can.
Compensated, but land is lost. You are compensated.
Land free.
Land.
From landless to land.
Land tied to land free.
Okay. All right. So we have Mohit and Kanchan and then Namita here. So we'll take those three questions next. Mohit, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So my question to Professor Agarwal is that there's a study in which you have included the sample from Sullurpeta, which is 23 kilometers away, while the study has analyzed the people or households, the one who have lost their land, and then from them to 5 kilometers and then to 10 kilometers. So what is the point of including the samples in your survey from Sullurpeta, which is 23 kilometers away? In any case, beyond 10 kilometers, the results are dissipating, isn't it?
Thanks, Mohit. Kanchan, do you want to also chip in with your question?
Yeah, thanks, Mukta. So I was very intrigued with the conclusion that, although the socioeconomic status seems to have improved, there is no, like the happiness doesn't seem to improve. So I was just wondering whether this had got to do anything with maybe the declining environmental status. Did you also include that in your study about the air, water, and land quality and the degradation or anything of sorts?
Thanks, Kanchan. Namita?
Thank you for this very comprehensive analysis. So I just wanted to push a little bit. Actually, the term land losers is not just restricted to landowners, but everyone who is dependent upon the land for their livelihood. In the new 2013 land acquisition law, that's how land losers are defined. And to that extent, and you refer to Michael Levine's book. So his analysis focuses not just on the owners of the land, but especially talks about the impacts of this kind of dispossession on women who often do not have any rights to the land. And once the land is gone, have therefore no dependence on it, as well as other people. So I do not know about this Andhra lands that you're talking about. But one of the biggest challenges with SEZ, apart from the fact that the policy has been an absolute failure, as you have also talked about here, has been the fact that, it depends not just on, the distance from the SEZ or the type of SEZ, it depends upon the type of land. If you are going to dispossess people of land that can be a source of livelihood, or in the case, my familiarity with SEZ started with the Adani Mundra port in SEZ in 2009 in Gujarat, where we had traditional fisherfolk who were dependent upon the mangrove forest, which was the breeding grounds for the fish that they would catch by wading into the waters. These are Pagadia fisherfolk who, because of the construction of the port, essentially lost their livelihood. And this community, for example, had a 14% literacy rate. So they had no possibility of getting any kind of employment in the SEZ. So I just wanted to bring for your consideration the points that actually Lavien's book talks about the impacts on all of these kinds of land losers. That's number one. Number two, I think that the basic point that he makes is about the flow of capital and the use of that to dispossess people, because I was at this land conflict watch conference where Mohammed Khan, who was the OSD to Jairam Ramesh when they were drafting the law, he himself stated that government craves land, right? That was a quote he made, and he talked about how the policy across the board in every state is to accumulate as much land in land banks as possible. So the central thesis that dispossession of land is happening not for the purposes of developing that area, I think still remains, whether or not in this one particular hybrid SEZ it is affected, but also I think it is limiting to the analysis itself if we are only considering landowners. And finally, I think your data itself has shown that there are chronic diseases and linkages with that. So to the point on environmental issues, I think we have to look at, and that was the point of the new land acquisition law, was to bring environment and social impact assessment in one framework, because often the people who are displaced are living in close harmony with nature in terms of their occupations, whether it's traditional fisherfolk, pastoralist communities, salt pan workers, agricultural laborers, and so on. Thank you.
Why don't you respond? These are three
Okay, there
very
are three
different
very
kinds of
different questions.
questions. Maybe Kanchan and Namita's last point is a little bit linked, but quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's quite. So Sulurpeta actually is taken, we did not know anything about that area. We took Sulurpeta because lots of people were benefited in terms of the job creation. They were coming from Sulurpeta. So Sulurpeta was considered to be very important element or location for us, and this is within 23 kilometers, and our criteria was 25 kilometers. So this is why we thought that we must take Sulurpeta as well, even if it was not a sort of rural area. So it is only after the calculations were done, after the estimations were done, we came to know that after 10 kilometers, there was no much effect. So that's how it happened after. It's a kind of, it's a result. What kind of time?
Time to travel.
I mean, it takes me an hour and a half sometimes to go to a house, it's less than that.
Maybe the Sri City folks can answer this.
Yeah.
In a bus. Yeah. For half an hour.
So half an hour from Sulurpeta to Sri City.
So quite a few people are coming from there and they are employed in Sri City. So many people actually might have shifted from this area to Sulurpeta, as their living standards increase. So I think Sulurpeta, we never knew that this would happen this way. So it was only after the results that we came to know that after 10 kilometers, the effects are dissipating. I mean, actually after 5 kilometers, the effects are dissipating. Happiness and environment, actually our environmental degradation, we did in the questionnaire, we did have questions on environment, and we haven't yet processed that properly. But during our interviews, we did not really come across anyone saying that environment is degraded and there is a problem in pollution. We spent 5 weeks there ourselves.
It has improved, they said.
It has actually improved there because they have, there are certain bird sanctuaries there. So they have actually preserved them. So I think I haven't done much analysis. Now let me just, so this is a sort of caveat. But to my understanding, and I haven't processed the data that I have, but what my understanding after living there for 5 weeks and by looking at the various aspects, in fact, I myself participated in environment impact assessment there. When I was there, it happened. It was a chance. And whatever my experience was, I spoke about that. So I found that I feel very suffocated in Delhi actually. And I shifted from Delhi to outside when I came back from Denmark because I thought I couldn't breathe here. But there I spent 5 weeks and I felt that it was environment, if you look at air quality, it was very good there. So this is something. Now, so far as bird sanctuaries, birds habitat, etc. is concerned, they have preserved that. Even within the Sri City, we found that there were several water bodies which are preserved where the birds were coming. So, I mean, I think nobody complained about this. We actually asked people directly about it. If you feel that trees are cut, if you feel that water quality is degraded, I think we did not really get any definite answer and something which actually shows that water quality has come down or something. But I must say that I would have to take more research into this area. So I'm not really because I always go by numbers. I'm a quantitative economist. So I don't have numbers to tell you that, but this is only my observations that I must say. Now, what your question is about landowners and all that. In fact, when you do this kind of statistical analysis, you have to identify certain indicators, certain variables in a very definitive way. So landlost farmers are the ones who have sold a part of full land to Sri City. This is how we define them. But then there are people who are living in that area, and when you talk about women, actually the study is ongoing and I really want to carry this forward. Now, what our observation has been in Sri City, that women are really empowered. women were married at the age of 14 there, 12 to 14. This was told to us. We actually had lots of discussion or lots of conversations with the people. So earlier they were getting married at the age of 12 when the puberty started. But now they are not really getting married at that age. And, they are getting educated. And when we looked at their security staff, most of them were wearing pants. All of them actually were wearing pants, and they were in uniform and they were feeling empowered. They said that to me, that they feel now. So some of these women who lost their husbands at an early, they said that earlier their life was nothing, but now they are employed in this city, and they are getting money, and they are bringing up their children with respect. So some things, so far as women are concerned, again, we did not collect that kind of data focused on gender, but our observations, our interviews and conversations showed that actually this is true empowerment of women to provide them with employment. Financial independence is absolutely important, which was not there earlier. They are getting educated. They are very much interested in their children's education. They were just talking about that, future of their. They were in fact talking to me when I told them that I am professor. They were just exploring the possibilities if I can help in getting them higher education. So I think that there are several things. Different people look at different things in different ways. This is what I have come to know. But from my perspective, I would say that I personally felt that there was a lot of women empowerment that I saw there because of the kind of women who were not only employed in factories, because they don't have any textile factory there. They were employed in many administrative jobs. And I think this is where the empowerment was coming. And I could see that while talking to them. And I have so many pictures, of celebrations with those ladies, because when there was a function, they came on in traditional dress and they were looking so different and so beautiful. So we really talked about
One
that.
point on land losers, just to clarify, the entire Singur protest was not by the landowners. It was by the people who were dependent on the land but didn't have title. And also because most of the states protect the rights of tenants or they protect the rights of people who are dependent. So just wanted to highlight that landowners are not the people who are protesting because they are getting the money. It might be other people who are depending on the land.
Sure, very true, very true. And actually, we also spoke with people who were tenants there. Many of these people were tenants there when we talked to them. Not many, everything is there in Burn article, but there were many tenants. And they told us that, the kind of money they were getting out of this tenancy, it was never sufficient for them and for their lives. So, but of course, this is not mentioned here, and I don't. Wait.
For tenants, what was the situation? So a landowner, you said they had a compensation, etc. But if somebody who was a tenant farmer, what happened to that household?
Well, actually, tenants were because
There weren't many, but
they were not given any compensation first of all.
Okay.
They were not given compensation because land owners only were own land or the government land. This was the criteria. But how the tenants were benefited was through the job creation later on. So initially they lost out. But eventually, because at the time, today actually they are employed, and I think maybe better.
In your study, in what group would they come in? Because you showed us results for
within 5 or within 10 only.
Yeah, within 5 and 10.
okay, so that's the
Yes.
structure.
They are mixed inside.
Yeah,
They are
yeah.
mixed inside.
Yeah,
And all those people you are talking about, they are mixed within that.
So in this-
But we don't have any separate analysis for tenants. There is no such analysis done here. That would be interesting. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And
Especially to
after
speak to
going back, I
Levian's-
will just check my.
Speak to the Levian
survey.
finding, would need to.
Actually, Levian's finding is more about, if you look at Levian's finding, he also finds that people are compensated more than what the price of the land was. He also finds that land was absolutely barren in that area. He says that, he has written that that because land was barren, people had no choices. So therefore, land acquisition was not a problem, if you remember that. So he made that point. But he was very unhappy with the way they were just given money. So that point is very important there. They did not have any job options there. So I think that was the point that he was trying to drive. That's the case.
Manufacturing SEZ has given jobs to
Jobs
people,
to people.
skilled and
I
unskilled
think
both.
that is
That's
where the
the main
difference is, and that's what we have
difference that
mentioned
we
in
are
this. That so he is very unhappy with the way people got a lot of money and they try to commercialize everything. So they did not really think in terms of future, potentials.
And that finding is sort of consistent with other kind of land use. I mean, even urbanization, what we have is the
Yes.
same finding that land use change actually creates an initial
incomes.
income, but you can't sustain
We
it.
had an entire chapter on the impacts on women and all of the other.
That chapter, but actually, yes, women maybe. I mean, I think I have this. Yeah.
Can I come in here and just bring in the question from Zoom, which is relevant here? Two questions. One is that what kind of jobs do they get? So do they only get low-level jobs? Do they get high-level jobs? So that's one question. And the borrowing question, what's the source of this borrowing? Did you have any sense of whether it's formal or informal, and where is this borrowing going to? So I think it will just round out this economic effect stuff, because there are people who there's Kannan who has a whole set of questions also on jobs, but I'll let him come in and ask them himself once you've answered these. Thank you, Kanchan and Mohit. I'm going to sort of let you go and move on to the next set of questions.
Yes, so far as, shall I?
Yeah, sure.
So far as jobs are concerned, they depended upon the kind of skills that they were given. As I just said that initially the baseline status of their education level was very low. There was 54% literacy, and out of that, most of them were actually primary education, had access only to primary education. They were not highly educated. However, they were given skills before the City actually operationalized. So there was a human skill academy that was set up there, and in that, like plumbing and technical things. You can talk about that, Benny.
One second. Can you just
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have a lot of folks still on Zoom. Lot of engagement. Yeah, just switch it on.
Okay, thank you. In regards to your question in regards to the local populace getting jobs and the skill sets required and what level jobs they're getting into. Sri City, even before the first company walked into Sri City to set up operations, and I'm talking about 1.5 to 2 years before that, Sri City, first thing we did was we set up skill development centers. We had our own skill development center. We also partnered with Siemens and IL and FS at that time. We skilled the local populace in various aspects of industrial skills like welding, CNC, etc. And women were also skilled, not just in the usual skills, but what you're talking about, the security guards which you saw, but also in sewing and different aspects of sewing. So if one of the companies in Sri City is MSR Garments, which is Wycombe and Shaftesbury, which manufactured the suits for the Men in Black. When I was speaking to their MD, it takes 3 months to train one woman on how to stitch a buttonhole. That is the level, because these are all hand-sewn suits and high class. So and that factory is completely women. Then again, if you look at Foxconn, 15,000 of the workers are women.
Yeah, let me just complete that. Actually, this, yeah, so thank you, Benny. Let me just, because we have
Yes.
many other questions, she says. So I would just like to say that jobs were according to their skills, first of all, but they were given skills. And over time, we find that the newer generation that is coming, that is getting educated, they are getting better, and skill jobs. And there are lots of engineers around there. People are not interested in diploma. Everybody wants to do engineering. So there is a lot of trend to do, and lots of private engineering colleges have come up in the area. And these people are really looking for high skill jobs and high incomes. So the labor turnover rate has become very, very high. So initially, yes, They were not educated, low skill jobs, but I mean, semi-skilled jobs, I would say, which related to construction mainly, and security. But over the years, we find that this newer generation is coming up with higher education, and they are looking for high levels of incomes and better status in life. So I think that answers. Now, borrowing, where do they come from? I'm sorry, we did not ask that question, where the borrowings come from. But borrowing, where do they go? That's what I just mentioned, that health is number one reason. Second is education. And the third one is the social ceremonies. So this is how we found that, I mean, of course, there are other reasons as well, but the top three reasons were these three.
Thank you so much. We have two sets of questions, one set from Kannan and one set from Arundita, and both of them are sort of taking us into this territory of what lessons do we learn from Sri City that can be applied more broadly. So that's sort of the thrust of their questions. So I'll just ask Kannan to come in. If you can unmute yourself and ask your questions, and then Arundita.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, it's a very useful and sharp research that can inform policy direction. I had 4 questions, one of which was about women, so I'll kind of change that now because I think it's been kind of answered. So even if these were not measured, it would be kind of good to know if there is any field level perspective picked up by the researchers. One was, how much of the jobs created in Sri City, how much of it was in terms of generated at the local level or Sulurpeta, etc., or how much of it was coming from the northern suburbs of Chennai. So that's number one. Number two, given that states like APTN, etc., attract migrant labor in industries from states like Orissa and Bihar, was this seen in Sri City as well? And was there any impact on social dynamics and demographics due to this? Number three, as a corollary or learning from Sri City, would the researchers recommend that such projects be with expanded area, let's say upwards of 10,000 acres, be set up everywhere? And number four, were there any barriers that Sri City faces in terms of labor, land, etc., as an SEZ under the SEZ Act 2005, and whether any is there changes to the law that were required to make something like this more effective and positive? Those were the 4 queries that I have. Thank you.
Do you want to take these first before moving to next? Because there are a set of questions. Arundita, I'd ask you to just hang on a little bit. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think women, we had a lot of discussion here. So far as women are concerned, we don't have any numbers. First of all, because I always believe in numbers and I don't have numbers. But whatever my observations and my our interviews actually pointed out was that it was a true case of, women empowerment in the sense of their financial independence and their confidence levels. Given the fact that earlier they were just married off at very early age. So far as employment is concerned, where it is coming from, how much it is coming from Chennai. So normally what we find is that within 25 kilometers, some of these villages from Chennai are also included, first of all. But more importantly, what I find was that we found was that high skilled professionals, most professionals, like CAs or like financial officers, they were mainly from Chennai, because in this local area, we did not have those kinds of people, but the rest of the people are in, they are from the local areas. I would also like to point out that now this is very interesting that from UP and Bihar and these places, we found that there were people who were there, and we found out who they were and what they were doing there. Most of them were in construction, and they were employed by the contractors for construction purposes, and that was a sort of moving population. So normally the kind of people who are employed there, they are the locals. So we don't see any kind of huge migration from the north there. But we do have those people who are getting employment into construction, but those people are there only for short term. And that also creates a sort of economy, because they also need housing, they also need all other utilities. So that also was creating some sort of activity for the villagers. So when I say self-employment, so this was the kind of, this was also one of those that employment. Now, the final question, actually, I did not get from, I'm sorry. What was that about?
That's okay. I think the question was around the SCZ Act itself, that what your learnings from this, is there something required for in the Act, changes required in the Act? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. Yeah, actually, there's no direct thing that we can draw from this for the policymakers as such, but it is very important to ensure in implementation that there should the practices involved should be inclusive while actually acquiring the land, and also the project planning and its implementation should be seriously done. So one thing that I think can be drawn, which I haven't written in the article, but which can actually be said, is that the government should be very serious about the follow-ups. That is, what is happening to that land? If it is not utilized, it means it is the kind of, opportunity lost. And it is a huge social cost as well. So I think that is where the government policy can pitch in, and they can make this rule of very strict follow-ups to make sure that land is used on time and the project is operationalized in time. Otherwise, now let me just tell you for a change that in Pakistan, they have made it. They have made it very clear in the law that it has to be operationalized within 6 months. Otherwise, the land will be taken by the state. So I think that is what we can actually learn a bit, that we need to make sure that, because unless the project is operationalized, people are losing out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Arundita, you've been waiting patiently. If you could ask your questions next.
Thanks, Sukta. Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks, Dr. Aradhana and Ankita, for the detailed and informative presentation, and also to CPR. So I have two questions and one rather reflective one. So for the first question is, you presented disaggregated results, for the distance of the households from the Sri City, 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers. I was wondering if you also conducted some analysis, or based on your observations, analysis across caste groups or socioeconomic groups, or even landholding size, to see if there were any differential outcomes of this project. The second question was, if time permits, can you share just a handful or a couple of aspects of the Sri City experience that you think can be scale to similar SEZ or hybrid zones, as you call them? And my last question or a thought is, which is also related to the earlier discussion on satisfaction and happiness. So do you think that this low satisfaction and happiness could also be related to there's some sort of loss of identity as farmers, because they've all lost their lands, they are moving away from the agriculture, and they're going into jobs, but they're not really able to, there are then again disaggregation in jobs, that high level jobs and low level jobs. So yeah, that's thanks.
Thank you.
Well, yes,
Lots of things.
the first
Caste and socioeconomic groups.
We actually did not really, this caste and socio-economic groups, we did not really see the separate effects of that. We collected the data. We do have the data on, and we actually controlled for that when we matched the two samples. That is the treated and comparison groups. So we controlled for that caste factor, because yes, caste is something which was only the divisive factor there. Religion was not the divisive factor, because all of them were of the same religion. So we had this social scheduled caste and the general population, but we did not really run any kind of analysis for that group. Yeah, so that is not there. But after you said it, after you suggested it, we may at least once try to see if it works out, and I mean that will be that will contribute to our study. So your comment is well taken. And what was the second one?
Satisfaction. So there was a,
Yes,
was
so
a-
land satisfaction, actually I'm sorry, actually with age, my memory is getting.
No, that's okay. The questions are here, so I can remind you.
Yeah. Yes, actually satisfaction level, to my understanding, it was, we did not know that this is how it will turn out to be. Because we did not see that kind of thing, when we were talking to them. To my understanding, the satisfaction level was due to the kind of income is insufficiency, because they felt that income was not really sufficient for them to pursue the education of their children and to have much better life. So I found that there was a sort of competition. This economy was not a monetized economy. Now, I think this point I did not make earlier. This was a barter economy. There was no money there. So I think that was a point of happiness, because everyone was like, exchanging the goods and they were happy. But now it is totally monetized economy. Money is a very big factor. This is what I was told. I was even told that families got disintegrated. That's what we saw. But I mean, even otherwise, the relations actually, they were really not, they were affected by the whole monetary system. So I think the introduction of money into the economy and into the lives of the people, that has affected the satisfaction levels a lot. This is what our understanding was when we were talking to different peoples, because they were talking about their own experiences in life. And so there's a lot of thing, but also one more thing I would like to point out, which is not really said until now. What one good practice we saw there was that even old people who were deserted by their children, they were also employed in Siri City. And they were, when we were roaming about the Siri City, we found that there were many people sitting there with sticks. And we were just wondering why these old people are sitting with sticks. And then we came to know that they were the watchers. They were very old people. Many of them were deserted by their children. So they were employed there, and they were given some money for that bird watching, for their jobs as watchers, because there were animals coming. So they were just trying to scare them away with that stick. That's what their job was. And when they die, we were told that their cremation was also done by the management of the city. And so this is something which actually we did not really, because we didn't have that kind of space in the article. We did not really, but this is what all we saw there. So I stop it.
Yeah, there's one question is about the scaling question. And that's a good place to sort of come back to the room. The question about whether something from here can be scaled to other hybrid SEs.
About skills.
Scale.
Scale.
Yeah, like as in what do you take from here? What are the aspects that can be taken to other
The scale actually is dependent on the location of the project. So I think that is very important, because everything is basically about economics. It is all about economics. It's a market economy. It's a liberal economy. Now, in the case of Siri City, actually, they are scaling that further. So they had completed phase 1, and now they are going for phase 2. And Benny, how much is the area now they have total?
So
Can we put on the mic? This is the button on top.
yes. So it's around 8,500 acres right now, but we are on our phase 2 of our domestic zone. So that area we have not included. That's also another sizable chunk which is
But it
coming.
means you are scaling now.
We are scaling.
Yes.
The way industries are coming in, we are scaling.
Yes. So much depends upon how much is the demand and what is the kind of availability of land.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have acquired, when there is this process when you acquire land. I'm not talking only in the SEZ aspect. Give you a quick run through. We acquired the land initially for the SEZ. Then we realized the domestic tariff zone or domestic companies, I don't mean companies of Indian origin only, but companies producing for India, that needed to be developed along with the social infrastructure. So accordingly, we gave a project plan. The APIIC they release the lands to us. Of course, that's the entire government thing. And so our project plan carried the entire 7,500 or so odd acres of land, which was, we had already earmarked that this much will be for the SEZ, this much for the domestic tariff zone. Came in the Electronic Manufacturing Cluster Act, and that we put in also. And of course, so much X amount of area was put in for the social infrastructure development, which meant hospitals, housing, education, which in which Kriya University is also, yes. And the entire, so we developed ourselves not as a park, I would say per se, but more as a city.
Yes.
Because the long-term vision of our founders was that it becomes the place to live. We developed ourselves on the principle of work, live, learn, play. So everything is there for you out there in Sri City.
Spoken like a communications man. Just to bring some light into the. So there's a question online from G. Suresh on what these multiple sources of income are. I know that you've referred to it in a scattered way through the responses, but also like what's the self-employment business that you're referring to?
Yeah.
The scaling question, I think, is also about not scaling of three cities, but also which what kind of lessons are you thinking for the broader SUZ story in general. I think that's
The scaling question was about what do you take to other industries.
Yeah, I mean, the scaling story, I mean, if you look at it like this, as I say, that it is very important to make sure that the projects are operationalized. You know, in India, what is happening at the moment that we have a large number of SEZs which are not utilized properly, and the land is lying idle. And this is a kind of, this is welfare reducing because many people have lost their livelihood. And now it is not really giving you return. So first of all, you have to make sure that it is operationalized, and there should be a very strict rule about that. Secondly, what I feel is that manufacturing zones need to be really promoted because they are the ones that are creating jobs for people. And somehow I'm very strong. The new structural economists, I have done many papers on that because I strongly feel that this is the way we can create jobs in this country. And for that, we need to skill people. Because in India, we are losing comparative advantages in low-tech economy, in low value-added manufacturing. We are getting competitive advantage in skill-intensive industries. So human capital needs to be improved, and there is no substitute for that. And this is something which we have to improve the quality of education, make them employable, and give them the jobs by promoting manufacturing in this country. So I think that is something which I have also mentioned in my paper. And thirdly, when we take up these projects, the people who are affected adversely, there must be some thought given to them. You know, it is not that. I mean, of course, everything is market driven, but I think it is very important to understand that there are some people who are losing their means of livelihood, and they should be properly compensated, not by in terms of money only. This is something very important. In terms of jobs for their long-term future, because many people actually this entire monetization and this entire distribution of money has affected the society very adversely. Okay, so monetization has affected even city, I must say that, because as I just said, that has brought in a lot of competition. So, and that actually is very, situation where people are actually competing with each other in terms of money and the materialism. So, but still, jobs are very important when you. Otherwise, so we have to really promote manufacturing hubs in this country. This is very important for us. And we have to see that all these are successful. It's not merely.
Yeah. Could you just elaborate a little bit on the type of jobs that you saw?
Yes, I just told that, that the jobs Actually, these are the light engineering and electronics. They are not like low value added manufacture this textile or
Yeah.
something like gel jewelry making or something like this. So we have jobs which are for unskilled people. They are looking after the offices, and there are many other things that they are doing. We have the jobs for semi-skilled people, for diploma holders. We have the jobs for professionals. So we have jobs across wide spectrum, and depending upon the skills, people are employed. In general, we find that highly skilled jobs are going to Chennai people, because these financial officers and the CAs and who else? I mean, we had these professionals were actually coming from Chennai in city.
Their education was also in Chennai.
They are, yeah.
They're commuting.
They were commuting.
Yeah.
So what they were doing is like they had the arrangements in city somewhere. They made the arrangements and they were made to stay there, say for a week. And weekends they used to go back. But even if they said that even if they commute daily, it's not a problem because of a very good highway connectivity.
And it's 16. And
And
it's
it's
16.
Yes.
How long does it take to go to Chennai? 1.5 hours. Takes us some time like that to come from Gurgaon.
Yeah,
So-
Very normal for a metro region, that's true.
Yes.
But even these officers, they were
I think
coming
maybe
from
we
there.
can
They are, I
formally
mean,
close and then we can,
Yeah.
whatever. There are still people online. Is there anyone else from the online audience who wants to ask a question? Thank you for staying with us for so long. It's been a very intense discussion. Our speakers looking tired and maybe needs more water and coffee.
But that should not prevent them from
That should
asking.
not prevent you from asking questions. We
Yes.
will ply our speaker with coffee if you have more questions.
Yeah, please, please.
So I'm going to give it another couple of minutes before closing, just in case somebody is thinking up of a question. You can also just raise your hand instead of typing into the Q&A box. If you can just raise your hand, we can quickly get you in and into the conversation.
While we are waiting for that, Aradhana, I was just, you mentioned this thing about, the monetization of the economy. And I remember that in the work around Maharashtra, especially in that area, there was also this whole issue about intra-household differences about whether or not you should sell the land, whether you should, because depending on what plans people had, and you mentioned also that there were larger households before and the split up structures, etc. So I'm not so much of the survey, because I don't think you had that questions in the survey, but when you were talking to them about recall and structures, did you get any sense about whether these kinds of frictions were there within households and how perhaps they might or might not have been resolved?
Well, yes, there were frictions. This is what was reported to us. There were frictions, but eventually, I think these frictions led to that division. And then people thought that this is the best way to sell it off. So, and the relationships actually were affected, definitely, in that process. And even between children and parents, we found that this happened. Because sometimes parents did not want to really sell off the land, but children wanted that. So there also we found that kind of friction. But eventually it happened that, I mean, the people who sold their land, they managed. I don't know about those who did not sell the land.
Mr. Suresh, you have a
But one
follow-up
thing which is
question.
very important is that their habitat was not taken, So they are still living in those houses. I mean, those people who wanted to live there, they are living, or they bought, another house there within that, in that village only. So we found that some people were like, families were staying, but not within the same household. They were staying apart.
So
It would be interesting to study the densification. of the-
homestead areas were not
No.
acquired.
They were not required.
Somebody should study.
That was something which was very important, because once you are relocated, like, from your
Yeah,
roots,
yeah.
that affects you very adversely.
Mr. Suresh, you can ask your question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm talking from inside the Sri City. So I can see whatever the observations you are told, rightly true. But one thing with respect to these jobs, every time, ma'am, you are saying that it depends on their skills. It depends on their skills. But I saw and observed that people with high skills also, if they're coming from Sri City villages, so mostly they will be like hired as a security or the sanitation worker or the gardening and so on. And the other things you were saying that there will be other level of work that is something like people who have done ITI and this diploma, they are hiring. And with respect to high skilled jobs, so that's only outsourced to Chennai faculty or Chennai or what is this other places where they will come in buses and what is that AC buses and luxury type. Uh, but the security and other low skill, the women and those guys will use auto. Okay. And I can also see that there are so many migrants apart from these Telugu or Tamil people. There's so many migrants from the North India and all those places. So can you please tell me what is the skill you are meaning here? Sorry, I don't know. Is it audible?
You are from Sri City.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. This is very
Mr.
interesting.
Suresh, one quick
was-
clarification. When you said you had migrants, is this a phenomenon that you are seeing in the last sort of a post-COVID kind of phenomenon, or was this also there before?
Yeah, it's a post-COVID. So I am here
That's
from last
after
1
you-
year.
Yes, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
this data is collected in 21.
Well,
Yes.
actually, but at that time also we did observe that there were these people from Bihar and UP. And we also were wondering what they are doing there. And we found out that they were employed by the construction contractors. And they were the mobile population. So they were actually there for the time there was some construction going on, because when factory is constructed, a lot of construction workers are required. So these construction contractors bring them. So this was what we found out. But after COVID, how it happened, what are the new dynamics, that we are not familiar. And we are invited by Sri City to see that. And perhaps we will go. And all your questions are very, very relevant. Let me just tell you, we shall go back with this new perspective now. So I think that is what the advantage of presentations and getting questions. So don't think that we are just answering and, just keeping them in abeyance. We are very much into these, and we will definitely look into these new perspectives. Skills, so far as skills are concerned, now we actually talked to many people, and we found that there were several engineers in these. Engineering is something which is a very common education there.
Yeah.
Because these private institutions have come, and even my surveyors were all engineers. So it is so they, but are they really employable?
Ma'am, sorry for the interruption. Engineers are from ITI and the diploma, like not the BTech guys, not the BTech students, I think.
No. People are not willing to do ITI. This is what actually we came to know, that most people are with engineering degrees, and even if they are not employable, they were looking for highly paid jobs. This came out of our company survey. And this is a big problem, because in this, when the returns on education have increased, people are not looking for ITI. We actually want to say that we have to promote ITI education. But actually in the society, due to competition, young population is now going for engineering, and wherever they get this education from, irrespective of the quality. And when they go, they are not employable. So I think that is also a big problem. But of course, whatever you are saying now that we know about this perspective, it's very good. We can talk more about it, and we can explore, because I am in the process of furthering this study. So I will be very happy to look into this aspect. As
Yeah,
of now,
thanks,
I'm
ma'am.
not able to. And as of now, I'm not able to say much, because whatever I observed, I have already said that.
No, ma'am. Actually, I was trying to see some literature on this Sri City. So I got your book also after getting this mail from this CPR. So I've seen that book on this South Asian region where you are working on special economic zone. So it got so many points. So Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but I will definitely be in touch with you and I would definitely like to get your contact.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
sure.
you can send in the contacts to, I'm going to type it in the
Yeah.
chat box, mine, and then I will pass it on to the speaker. If that is okay
Sure,
with
ma'am.
you, Mr. Suresh?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've just put my contact in the chat box. So thank you, everyone who stayed and everyone who's still in the room, which is not so many anymore, but thank you so much, Aradhana and Ankita, for the immense patience in answering all these questions, some of them repeatedly, because it's complex and there's a lot of data and a lot of people trying to genuinely understand what is going on, and clearly a lot of interest. So thank you, and it's very good for our workshop because it's a different facet of urbanization, which we normally don't get to hear in classical sort of urban theory and urban studies kind of framing. So a lot of gratitude, and yeah, and it's good to see, good to bring all these different perspectives and a very quantitative perspective into the room. So thank you so much. I'm going to get off the Zoom and let the Zoom folks go. Thank you. And then we can chit chat.
So thank you very much.